Today I'm talking about improvisation. Improv. It can be fun, exciting, and expressive, or for some, it can be intimidating, stressful, and straight up maddening trying to come up with ideas on the spot. It's a bit like public speaking or talking into a camera. Sometimes you may know in advance exactly how you want to sound and what you want to say, but then you get up there and just freak out. And somehow all of your carefully crafted thoughts seem to melt away like butter in a frying pan. Anyway, whether you're a new player just getting into improv, or even if you're a certified shred-eye knight, I have the trick to power up your prowess. So T.R.I.C. is my acronym for improv that I'm sure will keep you focused on what matters most, or what I believe to be some very musical things. It stands for, the T stands for Thematic, or thinking melodically. R is for rhythmic and repetitive. I is for inserting licks or fragments you already know, all your favorite ideas that you've worked out in advance, because even the best players are working with some amount of pre-worked out material. C is for chord tones, and K is for know your limits or your boundaries. So let's take a little bit of a deeper dive into each one of these points. So the first part of the trick is T, which stands for thinking melodically or thematically. So what I'm really talking about here is musical motifs, and some great examples of that can be heard from classical composers like Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, to name a few. You've heard it in classic tunes. You know, it's the part of the song that you maybe remember the most. Or if we look back on a classic tune like Stevie Wonder's Superstition, let's go to D minor for a second. Very superstitious, writings on the wall. That's a really great fragment right there. It didn't go too long. You're not letting your fingers have this run-on thing. By thinking more like a singer, you have to be mindful of the air. You can only go so long before you have to take another breath. Another benefit of playing this way is it kind of slows you down, maybe takes some of the panic out, and also allows you to think about where you're going to be going next. So we don't have to take something note for note. We could also take a rhythmic phrase, maybe something where we're taking fragments from different songs, or how about this one? You've probably heard this a bunch before. Of course, the classic intro to one of the best video game songs of all time, Super Mario Brothers. So we don't have to take it note for note. We can take the rhythmic value, which is da-da-da-da-da-da. Something along those lines can really be something to play around with and see how you can reshape it using different groupings of notes and combinations. It's already given me a lot of ideas and a lot of steam to keep going. So for the R, we have rhythmic and repetitive ideas, and this is going to pick up right where we left off. So much like that Mario phrase, da-da-da-da-da-da, we can take that and we can run it through different fragments of the scale and have a lot of ideas. But it gets really cool when we start thinking about numbers. So we'll get some predictive results when we think about even numbers, like 4, for example. You hear one piece of that and you already know where it's going to go. It's going to keep continuing probably, especially if you're a beginner. This is a fun thing to try, sequencing. It can lead to some cool results, but it can get a lot cooler even if you think about odd numbers. So for example, let's think about 7 for a second. We take a 7-note phrase and we'll repeat it after the end of every 7th note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here on the root. I'm still in D. So I'm going to go down the scale from the root to the flat 7 to the 5, flat 5, 4, just right down the scale, flat 3rd, and root. So there's our 7-note phrase. So against a click would sound like this. So you get sort of a wavering recycling effect. And another reason to repeat is think about a conversation, or think about when maybe a teacher might be making a point. Oftentimes they repeat themselves to bring home the point. The more you hear it, the more it comes clear in your mind what they're trying to say. So when we reach a point in our playing where we've been playing a while, let's say we've been playing 16 bars, if we don't repeat anything that we've played, you have nothing to take home. The listener has really nothing to take home of value. So we have to repeat ourselves, if not for solidifying a point, then building some tension. You've probably heard this before. At the end of somebody's solo, they'll do like, and that's kind of the end. They build that tension by repeating the same thing for a while, and you're just waiting for that last little bit of release. The next part of the trick is in the I, which stands for insert licks or ideas, your preconceived notions or notations in this case. So what I mean is that even the best improvers always have something they've used before. They're relying on devices that are sort of tried and true. Much like a carpenter has the tools in the bag for the job, we have licks, and there's nothing to be ashamed of there. We don't have to always be thinking 100% off the cuff. It's a good goal, maybe for some, but really I think you'll get better results if you have some things worked out in advance. So a way to do that is you could just start jotting down some tablature. I mean, you can use some binder paper, you can use Guitar Pro, numerous programs to help you get those ideas out. But doing that is an exercise and kind of like journaling your thoughts. You're going to be surprised at what comes out, and you can start maybe even setting some rules for how you're going to create the licks, maybe trying some wide intervals, some different scale patterns, applying some sequences, lots of different ideas there. But you know, another reason to do this is it's going to elevate your technical game too. If that's something that you're interested in, playing with more fluidity, more technical styles of playing require slow, methodical practice. That being the case, that's a fun little line I wouldn't have thought of on the spot, but having some time to work that out and seeing the technique that's going to go into it and practicing it with the metronome is all leading me to a bigger picture of getting a little bit closer to the guitarist that I have in my head, and that's what I want for you. So next up we have C, which stands for chord tones. And if you've used this method before, you know how powerful it can be. Some of you might be wondering, well, if I'm playing a scale, I'm going to wander over those notes eventually. And of course, that's true. Whether you're using key center or chord tone specifically, it's probably both going to sound good, but it can be such a beautiful thing when you intend to land on a tone and you actually stick that landing. You know, we've all been there where we've maybe gotten lucky and our fingers are just feeling really good and we're playing an awesome lick. Oh, but the tail end of it, we didn't quite stick the landing, you know? We're scored sometimes by how well we stick a landing. And think about it this way. If you start really good and the middle of it's good, but then the ending is bad, what do you think you're going to remember? Or what do you think a listener is going to remember? Anyway. So targeting some chord tones in the progression you heard earlier, I was just doing a D minor to a G7. So I've got at least 4 tones that are going to work very well for those. The root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh of both of them. So in this case, I've got D, F, A, C for the first one, and then a G, B, D, F for the second one. All great tones to think about landing on strong beats, or at least coming through the changes. So as I'm working my way into that next bar to target that tone, that last note was the third of the new chord. It's a great way to build anticipation and give your playing some direction. The last little bit of the trick concept is the K, which stands for knowing your limitations or your boundaries. Now, this is going to be somewhat of a controversial topic because improv in some circles is about pushing yourself and trying new things, and I certainly think that is so important as a musician. You've got to do it some of the time. But sometimes you want to look and sound your best, and that is not really the time to push the boundaries. So whether it be a stage scenario where you just want to come out looking and sounding like the best musician possible, or you're trying to impress somebody, that's for you to decide. But the important thing to note is, where are your limitations? Is it your knowledge of the fretboard? Is it your technical proficiency playing at a certain speed? Maybe not understanding the rhythmic value of things? Subdivision, for example, when you're playing over a strong pulse, if you're playing fast, do you know how many notes you're trying to squeeze into a group? This is something that can change your playing radically. And when you begin to understand that stuff, you will expand your limits. So while it's good to control the scenario and, of course, know your limitations, just being aware of them can be a huge, huge step in the right direction. That's not to say you shouldn't push it and just let your ear be the guide. I think that's really important some of the time. I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but try it both ways. And you'll see that there's a time and a place to stretch out, maybe in the practice room or when you're having a band get together. Try some things, see what's going to come out. You're only going to get better by trying and failing a little bit. It is important to fail. Don't worry so much. But, in those settings where you want to sound your best, know the limitations. So whether it's scale fragments, the visualization of the fretboard, rhythmic control, technical control, know where those things are at and don't play too close up against those areas that you might consider gray areas or even areas where you fall off the map. Okay, so how about a little example of putting all these things into practice? I'll take a little solo and then I'll put up on the screen exactly what methods I'm thinking about as I'm playing. So you can see the trick can definitely be effective. Is it the be-all, end-all system? Probably not. But it's just another device that's going to help keep you present to some of the things that are important in musical improvisation. I want to give a fair warning in that this is similar to meditation. It is a practice. It's not a cure-all right away, take this pill, you'll be better tomorrow type of thing. We've got to keep up on our intentions and practice them methodically. So improv, although it suggests coming up with things off the top of your head, and that certainly is a piece of it, remember that a lot of this can be premeditated. So get in the practice of practicing your improvisations. Use the trick to keep these things in your mind presently. Let me know how this stuff goes. If you need some more help, you just let me know in the comments below. I'm looking forward to next time. Thanks for stopping by.